Great pleasure right now to welcome back to our Book Talk segment the man who was with us about a year ago when he had a very fascinating and also best-selling book called Fat Chance, all about diabetes. And Dr. Robert H. Lustig joined us again. He got another fascinating book out called The Hacking of the American Mind, the science behind the corporate takeover of our bodies and brains. And Dr. Lustig joined us by telephone. Doctor, good to talk with you again. How you been?
Thanks very much for having me, Doug. Pretty good.
About a year ago, I guess, is when we talked about the book about Fat Chance, so congratulations on that. But you followed it up with really a kind of a combination topic, not only medically, but kind of dealing with culture and advertising and corporate world and all that. Kind of puts it all together in one interesting package.
Yeah, well, when I was researching Fat Chance, which was about diet and physical health, it was very clear that we now had enough data to be able to talk about diet and behavioral health. And with the corporate takeover, as it were, by substituting pleasure for happiness, it became very clear that we don't have a healthcare crisis. We don't have a Social Security crisis. We don't have an opioid crisis. We don't have a depression crisis in this country. We just have one crisis. And the crisis was built by the corporate world because what they did was they confused two terms for us so that we don't know the difference: pleasure and happiness. And all four of our crises stem from this basic misunderstanding. And the point of the book is to basically teach the American public the difference. So,
going back to,
what's the difference, you say?
I was going to say, going back to advertising has always been based on trying to create happiness or pleasure in your life, but there is a difference between the two. But people have blurred that, haven't they?
They should. Well, they haven't learned it, and that's the problem. So, what are the differences between pleasure and happiness? There are 7. Pleasure is short-lived. Happiness is long-lived. Pleasure is visceral. You feel it in your body. Happiness is ethereal. You feel it above the neck. Pleasure is taking. Happiness is giving. Pleasure is experienced alone. Happiness is experienced usually in social groups. Pleasure can be achieved with substances. Happiness cannot be achieved with substances. The extremes of pleasure, whether they be substances or behaviors. So you could have tobacco, alcohol, cocaine, heroin, sugar, or behaviors. Shopping, gambling, internet, video games, porn. Okay, they all in the extreme lead to addiction, whereas there's no such thing as being addicted to too much happiness. And finally, number 7, pleasure is dopamine and happiness is serotonin. They are not the same. And that's the point.
Do you think
but corporations have confused and conflated the two. And it turns out what they're doing is basically propagandizing instead of marketing. So what's the difference between marketing and propaganda?
Do you think it's a lot worse today than before we got internet and easy access to, like you say, all these things online, or different types of the kids on the phones all day? Not just kids, but is it worse now, or is it just we're noticing it more?
Well, no, it's worse, and the reason it's worse are twofold. Number one, technology, because now alternative facts, fake news can be spread, pretty much, at the touch of a button. So we're all being bombarded with propaganda nonstop. And secondly, both Congress and the Supreme Court have codified it in specific legislation and decisions that allow corporations to say whatever they want and not get called on the carpet for it. And these are new. These are basically since 1980. So you put the two together, and we are now being bombarded with all sorts of falsehoods, all sorts of propaganda, specifically designed to drive our dopamine and tamp down our serotonin, and we are suffering a culture crisis and a healthcare crisis, all because of the same issue, the confusion and conflation of pleasure and happiness.
Do you find it's more prevalent in, like, say, the generation that's grown up with this technology now, or is it all age groups?
No question. I take care of those kids. I'm a pediatric endocrinologist. I see them on their iPads, and I'm going to tell you, happiness is growth. Okay, the only way kids are growing today is horizontally, not vertically, and certainly not spiritually, and not cognitively. And the reason is because they've lost imagination. There is no growth. There's just iPad.
Yeah, I've noticed, when I grew up, and it wasn't that long ago, in school, you made your plans for what you were going to do after school, whether you played sports or whatever you did. I don't see kids playing outside anymore. I live in Florida. It's an
That's
outdoor
right.
state. Is that the way
I'll
it
give
is
you an
everywhere?
interesting statistic. In the 10 to 14-year-old age group, motor vehicle deaths have been cut in half in the last 10 years. However, suicides have doubled, and now suicides are more common than motor vehicle deaths in the 10 to 14-year-old age group.
Wow.
Why? Well, it's because kids would rather stay home and play video games and get depressed than go for a ride in the family car to a baseball field. Kids would rather text than talk. Kids would rather sit in their rooms, be alone, instead of, seeing their friends and, maybe playing on a soccer team. This is what's going on. Yeah. This is the change. Yeah. And the problem is that technology has facilitated that change.
I know you get into the book as well as far as what people eat as well contributes to it. But I know we have limited time. But what's the answer,
Yep.
Doctor? What do we do?
Well, there are 4 things you can do, and I'm not going to have time to go through them, but they are the 4 C's: connect, contribute, cope, and cook. And if you want to find out why those work, the science base for why those work, the book will have it. You can go on my website, robertlustig.com, and there are snippets of videos that will explain the issue, and hopefully you can actually happiness your way out of your depression and addiction.
Yeah, great thesis for a book, Doctor. I enjoyed reading through it, and again, you bring up a lot of sobering thoughts. But again, there is, it can be corrected, but it may take a while. But anyway, the name of the book, "The Hacking of the American Mind: The Science Behind the Corporate Takeover of Our Bodies and Brains." Dr. Robert Lustig has been our guest, and Doctor, pleasure talking to you. Give out your website one more time.
It's robertlustig.com, and you can find it, Hacking of the American Mind, right there, and also on Amazon and Penguin Random House.
Great. Doctor, pleasure talking to you. Apologize for a bit of the sound issues, but good talking with you, and hopefully we can do it again. Thanks for being with us.
Okay. Thanks much.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or DougMilesMedia.com.